Haskins, Babs Foster. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Devore.
How many of you were at the event in Placerville a couple of months ago? Yeah, I thought I recognized a few of you. It's great to be here. I'm Chuck Devore, and I'm running against Barbara Boxer. Let me start by saying one thing that you probably won't hear very many candidates say, because it has to do with another candidate who just spoke to you. One of the very few endorsements that I'm making in this race while I'm running for the U.S. Senate is for John Eastman for Attorney General. Now, some of it has to do with the fact that I happen to know him very well. In fact, when he was working for Clarence Thomas in the Reagan administration, I was working at the same time for Casper Weinberger at the Pentagon as a Reagan appointee. I knew him then, and I'm so glad that I haven't lost any of my hair to speak of, because I can give him a hard time to say that back when I first met him, he was in fact gray and I had my hair. And he's still gray, and I still have my hair. So John Eastman is a constitutional conservative, and that's what I'm proud to call myself as well. So it's very important, especially in regard to electing the top law enforcement officer of the state of California, very important that we put someone into that office who understands our Constitution. Now, a note about the Tea Parties. A lot of people, we have a few members of the press here tonight, completely misunderstand what the Tea Party is all about. You hear these different folks talking about how this is just some sort of a right-wing temper tantrum against Barack Obama. Well, let me ask you a question. If the Republican Party had stuck to its principles in 2006 and 2008 and had done what it said it was going to do, and lost anyway because of the economy or just because it was our turn to lose, do you suppose that there would be a Tea Party movement? No. Now, Chief, why do you suppose that's the case? Now, I know from my discussions with members of the Tea Party, and I've had some 350 plus events across the state of California since I started this effort to make it safe to once again call Barbara Boxer ma'am. Out of those 250 plus events, about 40 plus have been to Tea Party or Tea Party ally groups like the 912 Project. And one of the things that I've discovered is that yes, there are a fair number of Republicans in these groups, but I've also found that there's an enormous number of declining state voters, a considerable number of people who 30 years ago we would have called Reagan Democrats, a few libertarians, and frankly some people who don't even know what they are, but they know that they need to change what's going on in America. And what I hear from these individuals as I go to these Tea Parties is a pretty common thread, a pretty common theme. They know they don't like what the president is doing. They know they don't appreciate the direction that Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and Barbara Boxer are trying to take the nation to. They know that they don't like that. But the reason why they're not simply participating with the existing Republican Party hierarchy is because they're not yet ready to trust the Republican Party. Now, certainly you can see in the state of California where our chief Republican in office is Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I kind of view him as Exhibit A in California. As to what happens when we invest our hopes and than somebody that has a lot of charisma, a lot of pizzazz, but no track record. And they end up trying okay for a year or two and then go off the tracks and disappoint us time and time and time again as they grow government with debt. Does this sound familiar? Yes. And so I know that the Tea Party exists because the Tea Party sees itself as a force for accountability. You are the individuals who are going to keep the politicians that are elected on the hot seat and make sure that they do what they told you they were going to do. Isn't that the way it's supposed to work? Yes. So, much like you heard from our next Attorney General, John Eastman, I too have a belief system rooted in the fact that America had an exceptional founding, that our Declaration of Independence is in fact the mission statement of America, that the Declaration of Independence embodies what makes us unique as a people. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Very clear to me why we have government. Now, any king or queen or dictator or emperor can claim that the purpose of government is to protect their people. Not so the purpose of our government. Did you hear what they said? That the purpose of government is to provide an environment within which we would enjoy our God-given rights. Not rights granted to us from some monarch or some judge, but rights that are unalienable to us as people, as humans. The progressive left doesn't believe that, though. You see, they believe in a government whose purpose is to try to provide you happiness with money borrowed from China. What they say about socialism, it works real fine until you run out of other people's money. And so what is the form of government that the founders created for us? Dr. John Eastman talked a bit about our Constitution as well. And the reason why we have the Constitution we have is because the founders, being very practical people who had a deep understanding of history, knew that the reason why republics failed was typically not due to an external invasion. They typically failed because of an internal tyranny or dictatorship, didn't they? And so they created this wonderful form of government with three separate but co-equal branches. Article 1, the legislative, Article 2, the executive, Article 3, the judicial, and further divided power between the federal and the state government, all with the object of preventing a dangerous and tyrannical concentration of power. Unfortunately, today, we see such concentrations of power with the administrative state. In California, we might call one of these entities the California Air Resources Board. At the federal level, we might call one such agency the Environmental Protection Agency. And what these agencies have in common is that they really embody a fourth branch of government that has taken in all three branches of government's power. You see, they have the ability when they draft regulation to effectively draft a law. And they